It is the 200 level. Mike Carpenter in the basement studio with this fancy schmancy new StreamYard video application. And the first time we're actually trying to see just how powerful this setup is, we're bringing in a guest. The first of a few. There are next few Mondays. We have Trevor Valise next Monday. We have Lante the Monday before the first game for kind of a season preview. But to kind of get things going here and discuss the upcoming Illini season, I want to bring on the 200 level co-host emeritus. We've had a few of them, and this is one of the better ones out there. Isaac Ambrose. Hello, Isaac. How you doing?
That might be the best title I've ever been given, so I appreciate it. And I'm glad I'm going first, the first of the few, because I think objectively speaking, we both know Trevor is more of like the analytical. Like he's probably going to know, Caden Fagan's high school stats, and then Lon is just going to be he'll probably just start talking about some story from Sydney, Illinois, or something random.
Days in Camargo as a youth watching Jeff George. Well, I guess no, he would have been in college by then, so maybe back in the Tony Eason days.
And then somehow he'll answer your question about which game he's most worried about, later this year. So, it's great to be on.
I kind of wanted to, and I think the order of this, it's not like pre-planned or anything. It just happened to work out timing-wise. But it is kind of nice because I know Trevor had went back and listened to the one that we did last year, me and him, and he had predicted 5-7. He wasn't too optimistic. And I was 6-6 thinking, listen, I don't want to overreact to 2023 and say that this team will make a bowl game when I think they will. Little did we know that on New Year's Eve, both you and I would be in Orlando, Florida, for not just the Citrus Bowl, which I've always grown up on New Year's Day most of the time when it's not a leap year or whatever, watching the Citrus Bowl, or when there's not NFL games, watching the Citrus Bowl is one of the premier college football bowl games. And then here we were at the pep rally the day before. I don't think we had any idea, Isaac, 24 hours before the game, that we'd be walking out of Camping World Stadium as Citrus Bowl victors. I was still in I'm just happy to be here mode. So how has that kind of changed your identity as an Illini football fan coming off a 10-3 year like that?
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure I also went a little pessimistic and went 5-7 when we chatted last year, because I specifically remember having somebody, a friend who I was like kind of distant friends with, reach out and say like, "Dang, you're not very positive about this team." And obviously I'm glad I was definitely wrong, and I knew we were going to podcast. So I was kind of thinking, looking at the schedule, thinking about some things, and it really is just hard to fathom. Like, okay, this is what a lot of programs experience every year, right? Like this is what a lot of programs experience every offseason, where it's like, okay, where are we going to be ranked? Like, we're a dark horse, college football playoff team. Like, okay, are we going to win 9 or are we going to win 10? Like stuff like that. Like this can be fun, right? Like the Michigan game last year, the obviously the Citrus Bowl, and so many other games. Like that's what certain teams get, certain fan bases get every year. So I think knowing that that's possible, and knowing that Bielema has sort of brought that in just a short amount of time is still hard to fathom. Again, I want to see it like at least another, I hate to say, like, oh, he's got to do it another year, but history still says that this is bound to fail eventually as an Illinois football fan. So I think just the fact that I would sit in July and be like, man, there's people talking about us, like, where are we going to be ranked to start the season? Like that is still just feels so foreign, and so foreign to think about amazing tailgates coming up this fall, like, oh, everybody's looking at the Ohio State game. Like that could be another magical day, like where we never even had that opportunity in the past.
No, I think that the fact that both the AP poll comes out today, they doubled down on what the coaches did, and they said you're number 12, and then South Carolina is right behind you. It's actually, I think, a fair ranking considering the fact that, okay, you beat South Carolina. Both teams have a bunch of guys returning, including their quarterbacks. So it kind of makes sense that that's where they ended up. But to me, I think that's more of a sign of respect, I should say, for Brett Bielema amongst coaches, and then the AP voters that kind of followed that up. And I think you made an interesting point, how this year there is still that lingering thing in a lot of Illini fans' minds of, okay, just don't screw this up. Certainly don't go 5-7. And I think a lot of things would have to go wrong for that to happen. I don't think it's so much Brett Bielema has to go 5-7 for Brett Bielema, though, of course, to an extent, or avoid that. though to an extent, I guess he does. You kind of hit on the fact that it's more football program history. That is that albatross that I'll be honest with you, I don't feel nearly as much as I did last year. And I think that speaks to what that 10-3 season did. Not just that they won 10 games, but the way in which they did somehow felt more sustainable. And it didn't feel fluky, maybe in the way that 2022 did, as good as that team was, so reliant on takeaways and a number one defense that we knew year in, year out, we are not going to have the number one scoring defense. Oh, crap, we only went 8-4 with that team, So for a variety of reasons, I feel better going into this year than 2023 for sure. Do you feel less encumbered by this sort of, what if Illinois football does this again than you did 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think the fact that you have a couple plays go your way, which you could say this about last year too, like you were a couple plays away from only 7 wins or 8 wins. But the fact that you're a couple plays away from Bielema's first year being 6-6, and then you're a couple plays away from 2023 being 6-6. Like, I think that makes me feel a bit better too, because if I'm not mistaken, back in the day when it was always like, oh, great, here we go again. We had a good season. It went from like 8 or 9 wins to like 3. Like, it was like a big drop off. So I think that plays a part in it. And then I also think the fact that in 2023, you objectively lost so much NFL talent that we didn't even really realize we had. And we're still finding out that like Chase Brown is a stud. I know we knew he was great, but he's going to be like a early second round fantasy football pick for those of you who are in fantasy. Like his brother Sidney just tackled him. Like Witherspoon might be one of the best corners in the league. Like Johnny Newton's playing for the Commanders. Like
Kirby Joseph for the Lions.
Yeah, think about all those guys you lost, and then this year, really mainly Pat Bryant, right? And I mean, Pat was amazing, and he really came on this
for the Broncos. It sounds like,
which does stink. And I think you can cover up some of that with like a couple guys, but that is so small compared to what you actually lost that year, which I don't think we totally realized. I think bringing just the fact that you bring all that back, and then I'm sure we're going to talk about it a handful of times. Like at the end of the day, you brought your quarterback back and you brought the staff back, so it would really need to be. It's not like a couple things would have to go wrong, I think, for you to fall off and miss a bowl game. Like, it would have to be catastrophic. Like, Luke gets hurt, a coach gets in trouble with the law and like has to get fired. Like, the whole offensive line, all gets in the same car crash. Like, it would have to be really bad, I think, for you to only win 5 games.
I have thought, and in trying to think of worst case scenario for the season based on the schedule, I've tried to rack my brain around and think, okay, well, what's the path to like 6-6? And you're right. It would have to be something catastrophic, which is not to say that that doesn't happen in sports. It is sports. And it's not to say it hasn't happened with Illinois football, because they seem to always pull the rug out from under themselves right when they're on the cusp of something. But, the key difference for me is we would look at this year perhaps like we did after 2007 and 2001. And the key difference is 2001, there was Ron Turner, who never ended up being a long-term college football head coach. Ron Zook, of course, in 2007 and then into 2008. You go from Rose Bowl to 5 wins to 3. And that, I think, is, I said this so many times on 93.5 back in the day, the thing that was holding Illinois football back was that you never had a head coach that somebody else wanted. You never did. And now it's crazy to think that I think Brett Bielema is established here at Illinois. I think that the Big Ten has played its cards remarkably well in this college football landscape. So I can't see him scooting for another job. And Josh Whitman, of course, is a part of that as well. But I know there's a handful of Power 4 teams that would happily take Brett Bielema as their head coach. And in my lifetime, it's not many other Illini coaches I could point to and say, oh, he was wanted. So I think if I were to simplify it down to its, simplest terms, that is the difference between previous disappointing follow-ups. And if we're to use 2023, Isaac, we did a broadcast at Poor Brothers on the eve of the season. I think I went 9-3. Mm-hmm. I might have went 8-4. We were feeling good. Well, the roster said otherwise. Our Kool-Aid drinking had reached its zenith. And in hindsight, it was silly of me. I don't feel like I'm having to play any mind games to get this team to 8, potentially 9 wins. And that I'm playing this mind game and thinking if they went 7-5, I would be borderline disappointed or just straight up disappointed. So what a world that's kind of our baseline that we're starting with.
Yeah, and that brings back crazy memories because if I'm not mistaken, that was a Friday night, right?
Yeah, before the Toledo game, which
Toledo,
it took 4th and 13.
Yeah, it was something long to Casey Washington.
Yeah.
And I remember that game being super, like it went on forever. And then after that game, I remember talking with Jeremy too and being like, what just happened? Like, what are we watching? And I think you're right. You don't have to convince yourself. Like you might have to convince yourself like, okay, they're going to win 10 games, but you don't really have to convince yourself they're going to win. They're only going to win 6 games.
Sure.
Because of what you are bringing back, because of the staff you're bringing back. And like, right. You said that just hasn't happened very often. And it is hard to think that we are at this point now where it's expected. And like you said, like 7-5 would almost be disappointing. So I think I'm always more on the pessimistic side because it is just a, coping mechanism. If I'm sitting here saying like they're going to only win 1 or 2 less games than most people are saying, because then I can only, be happy at the end of the day. But yeah, I think just like one thing that Underwood has done, like regardless of like a lot of the things he's done that have been frustrating, he's obviously done more good. And he's just checked so many boxes. Like this just feels like Bielema's box that he can check that will cement any sort of relief. Like the moment that Illinois made that Sweet 16, it was like, holy cow, like deep, take a big deep breath. Like if we can make a bowl game this year, it really will be like deep breath. Like, okay, wait, we're not actually cursed forever. Like we can, have 2 solid seasons in a row. And yeah, I mean, the AP poll came out today. You only play 2 teams currently ranked, so a lot can change. But you definitely have some things in your favor too.
You do. And we do have a couple comments already here in the thread. So John, Brad, we will get to that. And if you were watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Twitter, which we're live on Twitter tonight for the first time, or on Facebook, please send those comments in. I can put them up on the screen. And this is very much like, I think I'm borrowing the same app, actually, Isaac, you would know, as Jeremy and the guys at Illini Inquirer. So the same sort of way we can put these on the screen and react to these. But before I get too far ahead of myself, I do want to remind you that the 200 level is brought to you by Hamilton Walkers. Steak, seafood, spirits, downtown Champaign, whether it is a pregame meal before an Illini football or basketball game, a date night, formal, informal, Hamilton Walkers is a 5-star dining experience without necessarily the 5-star price tag. That's one of my favorite parts of Hamilton Walkers. No pretension for as nice as it is. It is my personal favorite spot in Champaign-Urbana to eat, and I'm very pleased that we were able to get them on for a second year. So appreciate the guys at Hamilton Walkers. State Farm agent Brian Hansen, online at brianismyguy.com for life, auto, home, business, renters, you name it. Brian is my guy, and he can be your guy as well at brianismyguy.com. To give you a quick anecdote, I bought my car, Isaac. I bought out the lease. I own a car. So CRV? I got the CRV, baby. Yeah, the new car prices were not too conducive to again. So I buy this thing, and then I have to get the insurance updated literally within 5 minutes. I check my Gmail. Brian responds, "Oh, I got you. Here's your new card," just like that. That is just an anecdotal example, but we've seen that for years working with Brian Hansen, brianismyguy.com. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call and get your fall furnace check scheduled at 217-841-4728. Our air conditioner has been working overtime. You're up in Michigan, right, Isaac?
Yep, Grand Rapids.
Has it been as ungodly hot and humid in your neck of the woods?
That's the wild thing, yes, because my parents are down in Southern Illinois, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's like 95 today," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's 95 here too," which is like what you're promised when you go to Michigan, which like it's supposed to be beautiful in the summer, and no, it's been just as humid.
Our air conditioner has been running all the freaking time. But thankfully, we did have our AC check back in April, so it's running great. And every fall, usually in early October, they come out for furnace as well. You can get a year bundle, which is what we do as well, by calling Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, 217-841-4728. And finally, Owen Builders LLC for your next home improvement project. Call Luke and the excellent staff at Owen Builders LLC. You can check out a gallery of their work online at owenbuildersllc.com. Isaac, you can speak to Luke. He's a good guy. He was down at the Citrus Bowl as well.
Yeah, Luke's a great guy. I just saw him last weekend. Big Illinois fan. So if you want to find somebody that you can shoot the breeze with about Illinois while getting work done, then that's your guy.
And that's the thing. They do get the work done. They do it in a timely fashion, which with contracting kind of jobs, you never know for sure. So that's owenbuildersllc.com. Appreciate them and the Champagne Showers Podcast Network, and appreciate you as well. So whether you're watching YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, subscribe, follow, like us. If you're doing the audio podcast, same thing. We appreciate it. So it's good to be back. It's good to have Isaac Ambrose here in the podcast. And I don't really have necessarily a laundry list of questions, Isaac, but this is just going to be kind of a season preview thing that I'll do with you and then Trevor and Lon right before we kick things off against Western Illinois. I have this theory that I wanted to start because I want to kind of close the lid on 2024 before we get to 2025. And I'll tell you one game that actually meant a lot to me last year that on its face didn't necessarily have the sexiest result. But the Michigan State home win in November, I think to me was so massive for my own psyche. And it kind of, I think, propelled Illinois to the rest of the season where they didn't lose again. Darn near did against Rutgers, but they, thank you, Pat Bryant, Luke Altmaier for that. But that for the most part, the rest of the season, they looked pretty good out there. So does that game stick out for you at all? The reason I bring that up is because I think psychologically for me, it showed that, wait a second, we are, one, not going to have the backslide we did in 2022. And then because that was what propelled them in some ways to winning their last 4 games, we're sitting here talking about a top 12 ranking in both polls and legitimate lofty expectations for a team that going into that Michigan State game last November, if you would have told me, hey, you're going to wake up on August, 11th, 2025 with college football playoff aspirations, I'd still would have said you were crazy. So to me, there's like a line of demarcation. Remember, we just lost to Minnesota at home the week before.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at the schedule right now and remembering that game because you were losing at halftime, right? Or it was like a 3-point game at halftime.
Against Michigan State, it was maybe a 7 or maybe 10-point lead, and then you kind of blew it open in the third quarter.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, like that game was arguably the most how you thought it was going to go win. I mean, besides Eastern Illinois, you killed Eastern Illinois. Like Kansas probably could have gone either way. Central Michigan, same thing. But as far as in the Big Ten, Nebraska, you easily could have lost that game. Purdue, don't know how, that ended 50-49. Michigan was like, you beat them by 14, but it felt closer, but it didn't. It was just like weird to explain. And then, the Michigan State.
You were in control of that Michigan game in a weird for the third quarter on from the fake punt. But you're right, though. The Michigan State game, it's like all of a sudden you walk out of the stadium with a 3-score Big Ten win. Right when you were starting to think after the Minnesota game in a bye week, oh, God, please don't let this happen again. And not only did it not happen again, it went the complete opposite direction.
Yeah, I think getting a win like that is so – it's like, okay, this is what, top-tier Big Ten teams do to bottom-tier Big Ten teams. I mean, Michigan State was 5-7 last year, and I think that just the more you can stack those games, which Bielema's record is already great in the Big Ten. I mean, his record in covering the spread, like as an underdog, is crazy if you look at it. But the more you can stack those games like that he won when he was at Wisconsin, like just steamrolling like the lower half teams, I think is the more that you just take solace in like, okay, we've arrived. Like, here we are. Like a lot of other Big Ten, I would argue that, a lot of people are still negative on Illinois. Like a lot of people will hear this and be like, oh, Illinois just happens to be the team this year that, finished last year strong. And like a lot of national people are picking, so they sound really smart, but who knows if that'll actually happen. Like, I feel like we still need, you need to meet or exceed expectations so many times, for people to actually respect it. So I think the more you can win games like that Michigan State game last year, the more you can really solidify yourself, and the less deep breaths we need to take at the end of games.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember getting the tailgate after that, and it was a pretty nice November day actually in Champaign, and just sort of saying, "Wow, okay, so we're 7-3, and I don't know, worst case like Music City Bowl because you're going to beat Northwestern, and we'll see with Rutgers." And then, of course, that game happened. I want to bring up a comment here from Brad P, who said on YouTube, "You were 2 plays away from going 5-7 last year," and that's accurate in some ways. He's talking regular season here. Certainly the Purdue game, if they convert the 2-point conversion, oh my God. I mean, there's never been a win that felt more like a loss in my entire life. You moved on and that was it. But that was terrifying. And then also to Brad's point, the Pat Bryant game-saving touchdown after you missed a long field goal. Greg Schiano, for whatever reason, calls the timeout. I could point at the Nebraska game, but someone had to win it, and it felt like Illinois was actually the better team in that game. So I didn't feel like you stole that one. I think that you earned that. Oh, there's Chief. All right. I'm waiting for Rosie to make an appearance on this podcast, but I'm so like siloed.
I know she's a veteran from way back in the old house, even.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But no, I think my point here is, while Brad is correct in saying you were 2 plays away from going 7-5 last year, what I was more encouraged by is the fact that you somehow ended up 10-3 and you were ahead of schedule. Would we both agree, Isaac, that last year's team maybe wasn't as good as the record indicated, but to their credit, they closed out games that in previous years they would not have?
Oh, definitely. And I think the fact that you finished the season like playing your best was what was most encouraging. I think like South Carolina was your best one of the year, and the fact that came at the end of the year was so encouraging. And to Brad's point, I'll also say 99% of the time I'm also going to think like that. And I was thinking like that the other day, and then I'm sitting here thinking and like looking at the schedule. Penn State, right? You lose 21-7. If you don't fumble the ball and you actually punch it in and you're up 14-7 at halftime, like that was an ugly game. Who knows what happens? I'm not saying you win, but like you could argue you're a couple plays away from maybe beating Penn State. I mean, you were definitely 2 or 3 bad plays away from beating Minnesota at home. So like, yes, I would agree with you 100% that maybe this team wasn't a 10-win team. But at the end of the day, that always felt like the Wisconsin teams too, right? It's like they never had an amazing quarterback. It was like they had a great offensive line. They could run the ball. They played solid defense. And they were definitely never like Ohio State. They were definitely never Alabama, Georgia, but they were like at that tier below. And if they probably weren't an all bus team, all get off the bus and, everybody's already given them 10 wins. But yeah, I would say more like 8 or 9. Like 8 or 9, that was an 8 or 9 win team for sure. But winning close games is a skill, and they did it.
They did it, and I will say, if that season were to have been played out 100 times, I think that team ends up with an 8-4 record more than any other combination. And if you would have told me that before the season, I would have been over the moon. So let's say they don't win the Rutgers game, and we don't get that amazing comeback at the end and the catch with Pat Bryant. That would have stunk because that was a moment. But it still would have been a very good regular season, and I think it still would have gotten you in the Citrus Bowl. The way it all shook out, you weren't going to go back to Tampa. And the Citrus Bowl was eyeing you basically from the Nebraska game on as the team they wanted, as long as you didn't stub your toe too much.
And they really wanted Michigan and Alabama. I think Bielema said that at Big Ten Media Days. Like they were really set on having Michigan, Alabama. So yeah, I think Illinois would have had to really maybe lose like to Northwestern really bad or something crazy for that to happen.
Something like that. Yeah, all they had to do, we knew in the Northwestern game, we knew even going to the Rutgers game, like as long as you beat Northwestern, you're going to Orlando. Like I was already looking at flights and stuff. That was just a nice little cherry on top of the regular season. But you do get that win. You beat Northwestern. I agree, play your best game of the year when it mattered the most. And actually, now that I think about it, I want to kind of parlay this into this 2025 team and why I'm optimistic. You played your best games when they mattered the most last year. And I'm going to circle 3 in particular: Kansas, Michigan, South Carolina. all three of those games in my mind were the most important. And you can throw Nebraska in there as well, which guess what? You played well at Nebraska. So to me, Isaac, the most heartening thing from last year and why with all these returning players and coaches coming into this season is the fact that when it mattered the most, they seemed to really increase their focus, not make mistakes, and moreover, like make big plays late. And to me, that is something that does have the ability to carry over, especially when you're bringing back as many guys as you are.
And Carp, what's I think also exciting about that and different from history is like Kansas. I'm pretty sure that was sold out or almost sold out. It was a super electric game Friday night. I'm pretty sure, or
Saturday night, but it was a night game.
It was a Saturday night. It was on Fox, right? Or there was something special about it. And you showed up, like you made the play. Same thing with Nebraska. That's what Nebraska was Friday night, and then game day was talking about. Yeah, Michigan was obviously ecstatic, an ecstatic atmosphere, and then the South Carolina game. I mean, there was a ton of Illinois fans there, and it was the game that everybody was watching as they're getting ready for New Year's Eve and stuff like that. So in the past, it felt like those were always the games. You crapped the bed and
laid an egg.
Laid an egg, didn't show up. And I think too, that's encouraging. Like the Minnesota game, yes, you lost, but that was never like a marquee game where like all of college football was like, had their eyes on it. You know what I mean? So I'm not downplaying that loss by any means, but it's like, I think stomaching losing to Minnesota and then beating Michigan, beating like winning those games at home where like everybody was watching was just so satisfying after so many years of like the North Carolina Lovey game. It's like the world's on you, you got expectations, and you get rocked like that. It was just nice to get away from that.
It's so weird. I remember me, you, and Trevor texting after that Minnesota game, and I'm not going to try to polish a turd because that was in some ways a lifeless performance. Like it was a game that almost didn't happen. And I think Minnesota played well. Max Brosmer. Was that his name? The quarterback? He had a good game regardless, but, and Luke did not until maybe the fourth quarter. And then it was too little too late. And yet when I walked out of that, I thought, oh, so that's just a regular old loss. And what I mean by that, Isaac, is there was no tomfoolery. There was no terrible officiating calls. There was no, the ball bounced this way or that way. You just lined up, and a team with basically about the same amount of talent as you did had a better Saturday. And as Trevor had said, and I remember kind of thinking the same thing, why am I not mad about this? And it's like, oh, well, this team wasn't going to go 11-2, though they got pretty close. But this was just what happens sometimes. And I don't know why between that and the Michigan State games, Isaac, it seemed to kind of normalize an experience that in most of my life, Illini football has not been normal. It's either been I cherry pick a couple amazing seasons or it has stunk. And then last year we get this little November window as to what it might be like if you were Iowa or if you were Wisconsin from the 2010s or 2000s that wins 9 games a year, but there's going to be a disappointment here or there. I don't know why. I think I'm trying to polish a turd. That Minnesota game wasn't good, but it felt normal in a weird way.
No, I remember texting about that and being like encouraged because Oregon had gone so bad. And obviously Oregon was like the best team in the country at that point, but you looked like a peewee football team out there. So I think the fact that you played Minnesota well, who teams were starting to be higher on because they had just beat somebody or played well the last few games. So I think the fact that it almost felt like a reassurance, like, okay, this team is still solid. They got murdered by Oregon, and then they barely lost to a solid Minnesota team. Like you said, I bet you could ask, if you asked a diehard Iowa fan about like the last 10 or 15 years, they could probably list you off a loss like that almost every season, besides the years that they did win like 10 or 11 games. Like there's always, it feels like that game that is kind of a coin flip and you end up on the wrong side of it.
Yeah, I'll take that as opposed to previous experiences like the Wisconsin homecoming game in 2023, where that felt more like the usual Illinois loss. Oh, God, you got to be kidding me. Why is this happening? I didn't feel that way with, really, to be honest, any of the losses last year.
I mean, even
Purdue would have been that.
Oh yeah, that would have definitely changed things. Couple plays go differently, but even the 2022 season, like two of your most hyped games at home, you blew. Like
Yeah.
so, the fact that last year you sort of changed that narrative, and hopefully that leads into this season. Because I forget your home schedule. Well, besides Ohio State, is pretty nice.
Yes.
It's
I know
that, yeah,
USC has talent, but do we
yeah.
really trust Lincoln Riley? Come on.
And I'm glad it's earlier in the year. I mean, it's the
Correct.
fifth game of the year, but it's not like 8 or 9.
And I'd have to check USC's schedule to see. I'm going to do that right now, actually, what the first time they leave home will be. And as I look at it, they do visit Purdue on September 13th. They play Michigan State at home on September 20th before they come back to the Midwest. They will be 4-0.
Unless Michigan State does some crazy thing that at Illinois is going to be by far their hardest game to start the season.
Man, if you can somehow start off undefeated and USC's undefeated, then you might get an early shot at game day.
Man, USC, they go to Champaign, they play Michigan, then they go to Notre Dame. Wow, that sucks.
Yeah, I see probably USC. I still think they're probably good for, I don't know, at Nebraska, at Oregon, Iowa at home. UCLA is kind of a weird team. So I don't know. Is USC a 7-5 team? Something like that, maybe.
It feels like this is the first year we don't play Nebraska in like forever. I don't know.
It has been a while, and we had, other than 23, which was just an abysmal Friday night game at Memorial Stadium.
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, we're thinking about that. I mean, that was the nadir of that season. I mean, that and the game at Purdue where you got smoked.
At Kansas was bad too.
Oh God, yeah, that was a season to forget. And
that was just a night of terrible Illinois lore.
That felt more like an Illinois loss, which is why the Minnesota game last year was like, hey, okay, I mean, maybe because it was a nice November 1st Saturday and it felt really good outside, and I thought I'm not going to let this ruin my day, but it just didn't. I got this from John here, and this kind of leads us into this conversation about this team. He said, we were a sophomore and junior dominated 8-5 team that went 10-3. That's what gives me confidence for this year. And John, I would agree with that assessment. Let's start with the defense, because we can talk about the offense, and we will plenty, Isaac, throughout the season with the return of Luke Altmaier and the entire offensive line. But in a weird way, for someone that was down on Aaron Henry as late as the Northwestern game last year, in the first half, and Northwestern's third-string quarterback was making plays, and I'm like, I can't do this right now. And yet, talk about a guy who got his unit to show up when it mattered the most. Kansas, Michigan, yes, without a quarterback, I get it. South Carolina's offense in the bowl game with a sophomore and junior-laden defense. Who did they lose in the offseason? Who's gone?
No, dude that was playing nose. Why? Yeah, not a ton though. To your point,
T-Rod Edwards.
Yeah, T-Rod. That's what I was.
He was good. You would think though, with their history of nose tackle, that they can plug and play there because they've done a good job of that.
I think you returned, I want to say 15 or 16 total starters from like the end of the season.
Process of elimination here. On offense, you're returning quarterback and then your 5 offensive linemen. If we count Tanner Arkin, I guess that would be 7. And then running back, are we counting an Aiden Lawfery? I guess you could, but not your wide receiver. So that's 8 of your 11, right? And then you flip it now, the defense. If there's 8 returning, you got the secondary, which I want to start with here.
Yeah.
Xavier Scott, Matthew Bailey, which I think that might be the guy, the new star ready to emerge. Miles Scott, who has been pretty steady back there at the deep safety position. And then a Torrey Cox Jr., and a Caleb Patterson, the emergence of a Jaheim Clark late in the season. All of a sudden, I'm looking at a secondary. I feel like I'm probably missing a name and feeling pretty good. Considering last year, I was like, Terrence Brooks better be good. And if he's not, we're kind of screwed.
Oh my gosh, I haven't thought about that name in a minute. Yeah, what a season for him. No, and back to your point about Aaron Henry, there's still doubts. I mean, there's still, fears that, okay, now he's got expectations again. What could go wrong? But again, he didn't lose barely anything going. Like a few years ago, we had one of the best defenses in the country. We lose all these guys to the NFL. It's like, okay, we probably should have expected more regression. And this year it's like, okay, which they were like middle of the Big Ten last year, I think, like, and they
All you
played better
needed.
towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
And side note, if you want to feel better about the defense and feel better about Illinois, go watch the Netflix documentary, the SEC documentary, because they are just completely gassing up South Carolina and Lenora Sellers. So the fact that you beat him and made him look so pedestrian
Yes.
will make you feel a lot better. But no, Xavier Scott is obviously, it's hard to not be super excited for him. Something about knowing like you have a corner that can just shut down half the field for the most part has got to be reassuring. Yeah, and you're just deep like at those positions, and there's just so many guys returning. And like you said, I know there's names we're missing, and guys like
the Wisconsin guys, which you talk about T.R. Edwards being gone.
Oh,
but
yeah, right.
You potentially slot. I think Kurt Neal is more of a nose tackle type build. I mean, more of a D tackle, whereas James Thompson is more of an outside linebacker, edge rusher type, which you pair him with Gabe Akis, who is getting all these plaudits before the season starts, understandably. But I think that the addition of the Wisconsin transfers is really big for what you did lose in that front. I guess we'd call them front 5 or 6. And then in the linebacking core, I don't think that Dylan Rosiak is this crazy athletic specimen compared to some other linebackers you might see in NFL draft boards, but you lost him in the Minnesota game. And I think the benefit of that was twofold. You get him back, which I guess he would have been back anyway. So that's a big bonus. But on top of that, you naturally built some linebacker depth with his absence. And I got to say, the guys that stepped in, whether that was schematically what Aaron Henry was dialing up or the actual athleticism, maybe upgrade you got as opposed to Rosiak, I don't feel terrible about that room, despite the fact that there's not maybe all Big Ten level players in the linebacker room. So to me, the secondary, kind of like 2 years ago, or I guess 2022, feels like that's the strength. And if the D line can somehow conjure up with a Gabe Akis the likes of what a Johnny Newton was doing back in 2022, well, that's kind of your path, right? I mean, God, who were the linebackers in 2022 anyway? Who were linebackers that year?
Well, Calvin Hart started the year.
Got hurt in the first game.
Yeah. Dang.
Who the heck were the linebackers in 2022?
I'll pull it up. But
in chat window, if any of you guys remember too, I guess my point is though, this has, while I do not expect the number one scoring defense, and I don't need them to be like 40 or top, 30 or something like that, and you're going to win a lot of games. It doesn't need a strong, or I should say, all Big Ten level linebacking core.
Yeah, it was. Well, actually, a handful of guys that are still here. Rosiak, Ryan Mead, who's gone now. Kenan Odaluga was a redshirt freshman. Kreutz, Malachi Hood. Yeah, I mean, the linebacking,
they're old now.
Yeah, and Tariq Barnes was another one, but he fell off. That year. Yeah, like big time.
Yeah, which was kind of peculiar. But so as we go into this season, because we've had many discussions in the text thread when things haven't gone great with Aaron Henry, and how frustrating it was in 2023, and in the aftermath of that, when even Abielma said, hey, he learned on the job, and I'm thinking, Brett, dude, I like you a lot, but I don't want to be a program in the position of training on the job. We got to win games now. Well, they did last year. And it seems like he's probably one good year away, Isaac, from getting called up somewhere. And Aaron Henry, I mean. I think that he's that kind of young, charismatic dude that if he has another really good season coordinating, all of a sudden he might get a look somewhere.
Yeah, and he definitely feels like a culture building guy, like a guy that other coaches want to be around, which I think can definitely go a long way, especially in college where those relationships are so important. But yeah, I think if you can just keep up, I hate to say keep up with teams, but like a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken, your offense was still solid. It was just the defense was so bad that you just had no chance. And then even earlier last year, in like the Purdue game, it's like your offense scored 50 points and you almost lost. Like if you can just have a above average defense, which you had an average defense last year, and you're bringing all these guys back. I think some of the like D-line depth is a little concerning. Like I think you're going to get pressure on the edge with Akis and I get all the Wisconsin guys mixed up. So
well, okay. So here's the thing. John in the chat window here saying that James Thompson is a bit more of a DT, and it's funny because his build doesn't necessarily look like that. He looks like a freaking athlete. But he does, I guess, get slotted more in the middle, and maybe a Kurt Neal is more on the edge. But regardless, those two guys bolster that position. I know there's a Florida State guy,
Tomaway, or it's
funny. I've been playing enough college. I've been playing up college football 26. I should know these names. And it's so funny because I'm playing that. I will just dial up cover 3 nickel package, and I'll drop a linebacker back into coverage, which is kind of what Aaron Henry likes to do. Like just send 4, right? And I get Gabe Akis racking up 3 sacks a game.
Which,
imagine if that were a reality this year.
That makes me want to say that the running quarterback, besides for some reason South Carolina, has been like Aaron Henry's bugaboo. So,
well, yes and no. Think about it. Last year, the Kansas game, we're all crapping our pants because guess who's in town? The guy that just roasted us the year before. And they don't let him get loose. And then I know Lenora Sellers he can run, but he also it's like he prefers to drop back. And I think South Carolina, it's always a two-edged thing, right? You give credit to the coordinator who does a good job. Aaron Henry did that in multiple games last year. And then on the other side, you're like, South Carolina, what are you doing? We don't have like,
oh my gosh,
okay, what are you guys doing? But I think that's really it, Isaac. If we're talking about this defense going from average, which essentially they were just above average last year by most metrics, but in terms of the Big Ten, kind of smack dab in the middle. Okay, well, fine. Give me an above average Big Ten defense this year. And as we're about to get the other side of the ball, that's all you're really asking for. And with the amount of experience back there and the fact that not just Aaron Henry, who I'm still not like sold on as a 10 out of 10 coordinator, but all the other personnel around him stayed. There's a continuity amongst the staff that can't hurt. So I'm thinking I'm not nearly as worried going into this year with the defense as I was last year, because I was concerned going into last season.
Yeah, I think like the biggest thing last year, like you wanted to feel like your coaches could improve the talent, or like you did lose, some guys to injury last year. And like when Rosier got hurt, like your inside linebacker is a huge loss. So like the fact that you were able to recover, and it did feel like your scheme and your play calls improved the talent. They didn't completely go to crap, when guys started getting hurt, which like a couple years ago, it never felt like that one time. It felt like, okay, this is exactly what's going to happen to our defense this game. And it felt like that would happen. So the fact that last year, like your coaching really did boost the talent level, it felt like, because I don't think any of us had super high expectations for the defense, and you played average. Still isn't amazing, but like I think we would have expected worse than that. So that's what you want to feel, I think, with Aaron Henry this year, and get those games where you're like, okay, this is what the offense is going to try to do. Let's avoid that. Like the more that he's able to do that, I think the more confidence I'll take. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a ton of group of 5 schools or whatever in the next year or two if he has a solid season call. And hopefully not, but you might lose. If you have a great season, you go to the playoff, you're probably losing both coordinators.
That is a possibility, but you know what? That is something I'll gladly take. I mean, I remember with Bill Self, he loses Billy Gillespie, and I know that didn't really. Oh, she's fine, man. He can bark on this podcast. He's welcome. No, but Bill Self loses Billy Gillespie, and then it's like, well, okay, he has a coaching tree. I know Billy Gillespie didn't go on to do a lot, but and then Bruce Weber had the same assistants, and it's like, well, why doesn't anyone want Jay Price? Well, maybe because he's not okay. Sorry, this is not about Jay Price, but the point is, you want not just your head coach to be wanted, you want his guys to be wanted as well. And it seems like you're kind of trending that way. Switching gears to the offense, I could look back in my Illini fandom, and I would probably have to go all the way back to a Kurt Kittner for a quarterback at Illinois that inspires this much confidence. Juice Williams, just because I know that name would come up, and I love Juice. But even in the Rose Bowl year, he got benched in 2 or 3 games. So he was a running phenom with a rocket arm, but his accuracy, if they had like an attribute on college football was like a 72. Okay. It wasn't that great, but we love Juice. Luke has an intangible quality to him, Isaac, that really came on last year, where all of a sudden this dude that threw 4 or 5 picks against Penn State in 23, all of a sudden I am trusting him in every crucial moment, not just to not make the mistake, but I think Luke's going to make a play here. And that is a rare thing to have as a college football fan of any program, to say, we got a guy that I don't care who we're playing. I think he's the better quarterback. I mean, how many games this year do you think we're going to line up and say, oh, man, I think the other team has the quarterback advantage?
I mean, Duke's got that transfer who's solid. Indiana's got a transfer who's solid. There's 2 maybes. Ohio
Do
State.
you like that you're getting Duke? It's non-conference, but do you like that you're getting – I don't like that we're playing them, but I will say this. Better week 2 than week 10. Not that would be likely anyways, but for a transfer quarterback, fresh in their new playbook and all that, might as well get it as early as you can.
And you know what I don't love, though, is that that's a 11 a.m. Central Time kick on a Saturday morning, and it just reminds me of that Virginia game a few years ago. But ACC,
I would hope it doesn't go like that.
Yeah, but no, like to your point, I think there's going to be 2 or 3 games where it's like up in the air, and the other games you're going to have a better quarterback. Which is, I for some reason today I was thinking about like Aaron Bailey and like all those years where like I was so stoked if you could complete a first down. Like think about just how far we've come, and I know it's easy to. Yeah, right. It's easy to have an Illinois podcast and just be like, well, remember when we couldn't, score at all? Like, but no, that's the player that's got the ball in his hands every single time. And I was listening to Jeremy and Joey, and like they were going over his clutch stats in like the fourth quarter and overtime, and it's insane. Like those were like Heisman numbers, like easily win the Heisman if you were to do that in over the course of 4 quarters. So, no, it is. It's like he's calm, cool, and collected. Like he doesn't get riled up. He makes the throw to Pat Bryant 2 years ago, even the year where he was struggling, it's like he still was making some big plays. I
think too about Luke, now that I think about it, I think about the big plays that he made late in the game, and they made a good point on that podcast with Jeremy and Joey that, and what a position to be in as a fan, where if you say, well, what do you want from Luke Altmaier this year? Well, it's not anything exponential. It's okay, well, whatever magic pixie dust you have in the fourth quarter, just sprinkle a little bit more of that in the first, second, and third. Not that he was bad in those quarters, but it always seemed like he had a switch that would turn on, especially late in the game. And, it is possible, Isaac. It is possible that this offense is very good this year. And we'll get to the wide receivers in a second, but it's possible that unlike last year where you felt like you were going into most fourth quarters with the game kind of could swing either way, where you go into a few more this year where it's out of reach and you're up 3 scores entering the fourth quarter because the offense just is efficient and they make a few big plays and they enter halftime maybe a few times this year against Power 4 teams with substantial leads. I mean, that is a possibility that last year's team wasn't really doing a whole lot of.
I will say, not to feel like I need to bring things down back to level, but with Altmaier, it's kind of like Josh Allen. Like he makes crazy plays and he's going to score 4 or 5 touchdowns. But if he can he doesn't even have to get a ton better this year. If he can just not like fumble and like lose the ball on those strip sacks, like we will automatically have the ball longer and not lose more 1 possession games. That's a thing you would think that an older guy like that can definitely improve.
Yeah, I agree with that. That is a big thing that he needs to work on. Now other things that I'm thinking about with this offense, and again, playing college football 26 and figuring out, do I like running with Aiden Lawfrey or Caden Fagan more? I will say this, barring injury, which is a big question mark, of course, with running backs, I have no real concerns with the talent that's there. Wide receiver, though, is the big question mark. And I get it. Offensive line, we don't really need to talk about because they're all back. So stay healthy. Great. You're going to be pretty good there. But wide receiver, what is your concern level? I mean, I'll say I think that you can, out of all the positions on offense, get away with a committee approach in the wide receiver room more than you can at quarterback, more than running back, and certainly more than an established offensive line. But I also want to make sure I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid like I did 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think when you lose your top 2 guys that were both super sure-handed. It is definitely concerning. But I think when you do have a guy like Altmaier, and then you're going to be able to run the ball, you should be able to run the ball. It definitely opens things up. So it shouldn't be so much pressure on, hey, we're going to this guy. Hey, we're going to this guy. You would hope guys like Hollins, LZ, Colin Dixon, like Kapka Jones, like if just one of those guys you can get a solid season from, and then you can get consistent production from Hudson Clement and Justin Bowick from the Ball State. Like you have a lot of depth. You just don't have you don't really have that guy that a lot of other teams are wishing that they had, but you have a lot of stud guys. And if you go back to the Wisconsin teams, which I know those offenses were way different, but like Bielema wasn't out there with, first round wide receivers. Like he was out there with studs that were going to catch the ball. They were going to get the chunk yards. They're going to fall forward. And somebody too, that like Hank Beatty had a great end of the year. I mean, he did not get in the South Carolina game in the end zone that one play, but he made a couple great catches in that game. Like he made some great catches down the stretch.
Crossing pattern where he got rocked.
Yes.
And he held on to that. Yeah.
So,
but I will say too, Colin Dixon really intrigues me. And I loved what I saw from him in the second half of last season. I think he is as sure-handed as they come. He's a great blocker. He's got good size. And then the other thing and the other thing that I think is really encouraging is the return of Cole Rusk. And I know that receiving tight ends have not really been a focal point under Brett Bielema and Barry Lenny's offense yet, but I do think that you will naturally need to find some more targets for a Cole Rusk. I think Altmaier will be all too happy to do that. And listen, Tanner Arkin, you could do worse. He's still the starter in college football 26, but when you go 2 tight end sets, Cole Rusk, he's going up the seam. He's ready to go. I think that will be in its totality, bringing back an offensive line and bringing back a third-year starting quarterback can help you offset even the loss of a Pat Bryant or Zachary Franklin. I guess my question to you, do you think in totality the offense will be better this year than it was last year?
I think objectively speaking, you should run the ball better, which can, like I said, like open things that you wouldn't even think, right? Like linebackers are going to come down harder. Corners are going to bite harder. Like safeties are going to be looking more in the backfield. So I think you're objectively going to run the ball better, which can open things up. So it's hard to like, I want to sit on the fence just because you lost Zachary and because you lost Pat Bryant. But I mean, if you stay healthy, I think you can definitely be better. Because I mean, Fagan getting hurt last year, that was big. Like he just falls forward and gets those yards, and he's been disappointing for how big he is. But him and Lawfrey and Khalil Valentine's another guy that like showed some real shine last year that doesn't even get talked about that much. And the offensive line, like you're bringing everybody back basically. So that's another thing that is behind the scenes really that doesn't get talked about as much. And that's like the most important unit on the field for either team by far. So I think stay healthy and they can definitely be better.
To keep it short and sweet, special teams, you got a good kicker and a good punter. There you go. And you got a good returner. So I like where they stand in a way where 2 years ago, special teams killed you in 23.
Oh,
they
my gosh.
They were terrible. And they were pretty good last year. And I think they have a chance of being even better this year. So the great thing, Isaac, is I look at the 3 units. There's not one I point to and say, ugh. I think all are at worst above average. And more encouragingly, I think all 3 have the opportunity to be pretty darn good. And if they can all be, and I think this is realistic, all top 40 nationally in however you would rank offense, defense, special teams, then with this schedule, you're going to make hay if that's what they do. I mean, what would we say before we get to a few final predictions here? Neither you or I are asking this team to be elite. And part of the reason we aren't is because they don't need to be in order to fulfill that top 12 ranking that was bestowed upon them.
No, I think you might need to be like top 20, top 10 in like offense if you want to make the playoff. But yeah, I think if you want to win 8-9 games, then yeah, top 40 for those categories with this schedule, you can definitely still have a great season. I am, yeah. And I hate that. I know we're going to probably mention at the end. I almost wish the playoff thing wasn't even like talked about. So then we could like still be, because 9-3 is such a great season. Like that's such a great season for, like, I mean, if you lose, Ohio State, at Washington, maybe at Indiana, like that's such a good season. But, and I know that's off of what you asked, but
No,
yeah,
yeah,
I think
I think that
the offense at least needs to be higher than that, which if I had to guess one of the units that's going to be better than 40, it'd be that one.
and it would be a fair thing to predict just because you got a third-year starter coming back that has something to his game that excites you. All right, so let's wrap up today with just a few predictions, and we won't do game by game, but I do have this season and how it swings kind of tied up into 4 games. I want you to give me the record Illinois is going to have in these 4 games.
Okay.
At Duke, at Indiana, USC at home, at Washington. To me, those are the 4 games that will tell the tale of the season. Ohio State will leave as an outlier. That'll be what it is when it arrives on October 11th. So at Duke, at Indiana, USC at home, at Washington, which I think people are sleeping on just how difficult of a place that is to win. What is Illinois' record in those 4 games? And we'll go from there.
Man. So I think an outsider, like the college football expert, would probably say 3-1. But again, I'm pessimistic. So my gut wants to say 2-2 just to be safe. But I think so if you were to make the playoff, you lose 2 games, one of them's coming right there for sure. So I think I'm going to say 2-2 just to be pessimistic. But I could definitely see 3-1. I don't think you're going 4-0 in that stretch.
I would agree with that. So let's go 2-2 as a hypothetical, and this will help us kind of hammer in our predictions, which I'll be myself a little bit redundant over the next 3 episodes. I feel pretty consistent where I end up with this. Let's say 2-2, and I think that's fair for those 4 games. And let's throw in a loss to Ohio State. Okay. Do you think then of the remaining games, and that be Western Illinois, Western Michigan, that be at Purdue, Rutgers, Maryland, at Wisconsin, and Northwestern. And I feel like I'm missing one in there as well. But regardless, do you essentially think then, outside of those 2 losses in the 4-game stretch we talked about in Ohio State, that this team has a decent likelihood of winning the rest of them?
Yeah, I mean, both Westerns should be wins. Maryland hopefully stays really bad. Rutgers hopefully doesn't come up. Like Wisconsin, the Wisconsin one's a weird one just because I know a lot of people are just assuming like Fickle is going to get things figured out. And then I've heard some people think that they might fall off the cliff if a couple things go wrong. But
I like the timing of that game. Let's say we're early October and they're still swinging, like they're 3-2 and they could still have a good year. I think there's an above 0 chance that they just stink and they're limping to the finish with an interim coach by that point.
But yeah, I think that's the only one where I would really be worried about. And it's the Big Ten, crazy things happen, but I think we are a good team. And eventually as Illinois fans, we got to start thinking of ourselves as a good team, not being unrealistic, but being like, okay, we should beat Maryland at home. We should beat Rutgers at home, things like that.
Yes. And I think with stuff on the line, presuming there still will be at that point, and I think there can be, that Illinois would show up for those. So are we both kind of in that 9-3 wheelhouse?
Yeah, I'm going to say I think I've gone 5-7. No. I think I did go like 8-4 when we were at Poor Bros.
Oh, we were pretty pumped about that.
I think I gotta go. If you're gonna go 9-3, I think I gotta go 8-4, and then hopefully we're both wrong. Because I do think like there's the schedule, the team like Washington, you never know. They could be like top 10 when you play them. Like, and
I think we lose that game.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. I don't like the timing of it, though. You do come off of a bye week, so I guess that does help. But I get the feeling Washington's going to be a team that's going to try to get to 7, maybe 8 wins, and that's going to be one where it's like, man, if we can beat a potentially ranked Illinois team and punch our ticket to a bowl game or something for a coach that really needs it out there. Yeah.
You know what's going to be intense is if, say, we lose Ohio State and Indiana, you've already got your 2 losses. So going to Washington, you basically got to win
Yeah.
out the rest of the year if you want to have a chance at the playoff. I think that'll be stressful too at Washington if you've already got 2 losses. But yeah,
On a
those
scale of 1 to
there's
10,
a lot of interesting games.
Yeah, and I guess the last question I'm going to ask you is this: on a scale of 1 to 10, if I tell you right now Illinois is not making the college football playoff right now, if I told you that right now, 1 to 10, how disappointed are you with that fact? If they aren't making the playoff, sorry, Isaac. What does your gut say at that?
Honestly, if I just like go tell little kid Isaac, like, hey, you're gonna go 9-3, and also I'll have a caveat of this. If you can promise me that we can have another like Florida bowl game and like have an experience like we've had like last year and like the ReliaQuest Bowl, I would be like a 2 out of 10 disappointed. But if it's like, hey, you go 6-6 and you're going to Detroit or whatever, I know that wouldn't happen, but then I would be like a 10. But I think honestly, if you can go 9-3, 8-4 and have a fun bowl game, I wouldn't be too disappointed. Like that's still so like it's not the playoff, but odds are you're not going to win the national championship. I know making the playoff is insane, but I would take another trip to Orlando or something and have like a great weekend and beat another
loved
SEC
it.
team.
I love both experiences. Even though Tampa you lost, it was still a great
Yeah.
trip, and Orlando was just perfection. I went to freaking Disney the next day.
Yep.
I mean, after Illinois, and where'd my Illini shirt? Okay, so I will say this. And I'm going to bang this drum the next 2 episodes as well. I don't need this team to make the playoff. I don't. And as you said, 8 wins, 9 wins. I'm sorry. I've lived enough Illini football to say that's a good year, and I'm not going to lose sight of that. But here's the exciting thing, Isaac. They could.
Yeah.
They could. And for people that put them at 12, that's not outlandish. Given what they have coming back, given their coach, given the schedule, they do have an opportunity. So in a weird way, yes, if they lose at Duke, you bet I'm going to be pissed off. But I will try to not lose sight of the fact that, wait a second, there's still a lot of winnable games out there. And that I feel like you have the staff and the quarterback to ultimately win more games than you lose. And then we'll see when the dust settles what that total ends up being after November. But I mean, hey, let's just say this. Would the dream be that you somehow get a home college football playoff game? To me, I would, even if you told me we lose the game, that would be dream season for me outside of winning the national title, which I'm not. No, sorry. But hosting a college football playoff game, sign me up.
That would be like the Michigan game last year on crack. Like that would be all of Champaign would be, blocked off down into Savoy. Like that would be insane. And honestly, like as Illinois fans, I want to sit in this fantasy. I'd love to sit in this fantasy, but like having 2 seasons in a row, like having another season of 7 or 8 wins, like that should be our playoff. Like if we can break history and like get out of that funk of never being able to repeat a solid season, like that to me, like I feel like that will be internally like a mini playoff. It's not as exciting, like in the national media is not going to recognize it, but if you just sit and think about how we never repeat greatness, like that would be such an achievement, at least in Champaign.
Yeah. Hope springs eternal, I think, and for good reason. This is an exciting time to be an Illini fan, and I'm already pumped for that Friday, getting things rolling. Are you coming down to any games this year?
I'm planning on the Ohio State game right now, and I want to get to another one. I got a buddy in Indy, so we might go to the Purdue game too, because
I'm considering that, so I'll be in touch with you about that.
Yeah, and the tickets were only like $14 when I looked. So
I am going to the Indiana game. Me and a couple friends are going to the
and they're
today. It's a sellout.
It's a sellout in Bloomington.
Yes.
Wow.
So let's go.
Ranked. There's gonna be so many storylines about ranked Illinois, Indiana football because they're 20th right now.
I like their chances in that game.
Man, that's gonna be. And I don't know off the top of my head who they're losing, but that's that is a perk about playing Duke. Like I know we've texted a lot about like why do you even play Duke if you could just play Central Arkansas and get a win. But like, and you know, that's like Underwood's theory, right? Is like you play all these tough teams to start the year, so then later on you're better off. It's like Indiana, same thing. They play Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State. Like you at least play at Duke. If you win that game, you will definitely have been tested. Where Indiana, USC, like won't even have been touched probably.
You will vault into the top 10 if you beat Duke. Not because Duke is certifiably top 25, but they're like top 40, top 45. And I think that it's actually, I hated it for many reasons. I'm just going to simplify it this way, Isaac. It's Brett Bielema versus Manny Diaz. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's Manny Diaz. You can't lose that game. But here's the thing. If this were last year's Illini team, not as experienced as what everything they went through, yeah, I'd be more leery about it. But I think I'm just going to try to say win by a point, win by a half point. I don't care. But get the win, and all of a sudden you have another feather in your cap that would only strengthen a potential playoff conversation, even if you lose a couple games in the Big Ten. So that would be a nice and I think manageable road win in week 2. But
the Jeff Thomas revenge game.
Yeah. Am I going to be nervous? Absolutely. But okay, so we'll stay in touch about the Purdue game because I
definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see as many games as I can, and the fact they're at Indiana and Purdue, which are just a stone's throw away. But cool thing is, Isaac, we got this video set up now, so we can do this anytime. I appreciate almost got 150 people watching out there, so thank you for that.
Oh, nice. Let's go.
Yeah, and I see on Twitter for the first time as well. I know that's a boost. Before we get out of here, just got to thank our sponsors, of course. That would include Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign, Steak, Seafood, and Spirits. Before a game, after a game, date night, formal, informal, whichever. Hamilton Walkers is the best restaurant in Champaign-Urbana. I'm not just saying that. It is truly the best. Also, got to thank State Farm agent Brian Hansen online at brianismyguy.com. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call at 217-841-4728. And Owen Builders, LLC. For your next home improvement project, check out a gallery of their work online at owenbuildersllc.com. Isaac, next time we talk, and we'll just figure out based on schedule and stuff, but, you know, whether it's a second half reaction or a middle of the week leading into a game or something, I'd love to have you on as the season goes along, and hopefully they give us plenty of positive fodder to talk about.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. This brings me back to the COVID podcast we did, post-game podcast. So,
man, isn't it nice?
Yeah.
Were fun for what they were, and we needed it at the time. But man, isn't it nice to do this without the COVID? That's the good stuff right there.
Oh yeah, not having to worry about all that stuff and getting sick. Yeah, no, this is much better, much better.
Got to thank Chief for being sideline reporter this evening.
I don't know what his deal is. He must know that it's football season and that he's named after Illinois or something. But he's excited. He's probably going 10-2. I think is his prediction.
I like that, Chief. I like your optimism. All right, for Isaac Ambrose, I'm Mike Carpenter, and we will be back next Monday with Trevor Valise. It is the 200 level.